picked IT because there was more money in it, basically. But I kept the kind of the theatre and that kind of side of things going as kind of more of a hobby, I suppose, throughout everything I do. And actually, even the two worlds have kind of joined together every now and again.
That is Francis Pindar, cloud architect and platform owner for NetStronghold, as well as the author of his own site over at Admin to Architect. I'm Josh Burke, your host for the Salesforce Developer Podcast. And here on the podcast, you'll hear stories and insights from developers for developers. Today, we sit down and talk with Francis about a wide variety of topics, including his work with London's Calling, as well as his tips and tricks when it comes to learning Salesforce and getting certified. But as usual, we start with his early years, back when he had a BBS.
And yeah, I'd kind of set up a BBS, and it was actually on my parents' landline. And it was kind of advertised as, you must ring it, after hours. Otherwise, people would ring during the day and my parents would pick it up and have a modem trying to do a handshake to them. And they're like, what the? And so, yeah, and eventually they got, it got to the point where it's like, this is ridiculous. We'll get you your own line. And after a lot of begging from me as well. And so, yeah, I got my own telephone line to kind of hook up my BBS to it, which was called Goose Attack BBS.
Yes, and it's like, I just, it's almost getting into a theme of the show of dating ourselves, because I'm sure there are some listeners that are like, phone? Like, what the heck are they talking about, right?
Handshaking and
Go Google it, young listeners. We're not going to explain it all to you right now.
No, it was good. It was good. It was my early experience of programming. And my dad had an Amstrad PCW that he did word processing on, and I did before the BBS, came about, and I kind of played around on that a little bit.
Gotcha.
And then started working on the BBS and having fun and games on that.
Nice.
Until I do remember I did make a slight mistake on the BBS at one point, and I was hooking up FidoNet, which is the kind of the messaging in a network. Mm-hmm. And I'd kind of programmed it slightly incorrectly. And it's supposed to overnight ring your local hub to upload the messages that people had written on your BBS and then download the latest ones. So basically people could chat with each other all over the world through this kind of slow, connection or whatever. And I'd basically configured it such that it would ring Brazil every 5 minutes overnight. The Brazilian BBS would go, "Who the hell are you?" Would hang up. Then my BBS would go, "Wait a minute, I haven't sent the messages yet." And it would ring it again. And this went on, unbeknownst to me, for a couple of weeks until my parents got the bill through the post, a fully itemized bill. And it was quite large. But luckily, my dad, being the scientist he is, said, essentially, well, you need to fix this first, make sure it doesn't happen again, and find out how you're going to pay for this bill. So that's my first foray into testing, or not, as the case may be.
Or not. I feel like actually those two, like, maybe this is why you lean to trying to get something that was going to pay you a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. Pay off that phone bill from the 90s.
Yeah. So then how did you get into the Salesforce ecosystem?
So Salesforce, it was a bit of a bizarre... Actually, I tracked it back. I did a talk at India Dreaming a couple of years ago. And they basically said, talk about anything you like. And I basically did compare what IT was back in 97 with what it is now and what I see the future to be, and futurist looking. And part of that was kind of looking back and saying, well, how did I get into Salesforce? And I actually worked out it was directly because of Harry Potter, which I know sounds a bit odd.
It's a little odd.
It is a little odd.
This is a first.
But essentially, it all started with me kind of waking up one morning, deciding that I wanted to be on a Harry Potter film. And all my friends thinking I was absolutely insane and bonkers. My parents going, really? And me going, well, no, actually, I'm going to do this and see how I can do it. And I kind of looked at my strengths to see, what I could be, in Harry Potter, and realized I had absolutely none whatsoever, no skills to come to the table whatsoever. And so I started kind of digging into it and found the extras agency they used and basically joined them. And started going through all kinds. I was in Love Actually. I was in all kinds of different things until eventually I got a phone call saying, do you want to be Fred Weasley's stunt double in Harry Potter for a couple of weeks? I was like, yeah. And off I went.
Really?
And that was kind of working on a load of visual effects shots, which got me interested in visual effects, which then got me interested in learning more about that, which got me working for a company that taught visual effects, that then employed me to set up a CRM and a kind of a film post-production tool. Because they knew that I'd done development before and e-learning and things like this.
Yeah.
And that's when I started kind of researching CRMs. I had no idea what they did or what they were for. There was a number of competitors plus Salesforce on the list. And the moment I saw Salesforce, I saw, wait a minute, this is like the future of computing. And got it implemented. And then I literally quit that job, just crammed for a month everything I could possibly find on the internet, which wasn't a lot about Salesforce, and got a job at a consultancy in London.
Wow.
And that was like 13 years ago. So yeah, I can directly link it to Harry Potter in an indirect kind of a way.
Okay, a couple follow-up questions. What's it like being a stunt double on a Harry Potter set?
It was basically, it was less stunt.
Because I was going to say, don't take this the wrong way, but when I think of Francis, I don't instantly go stuntman.
Neither did I. And it basically was, I was filling in. So they had kids being these kind of stunt stand-in. Well, essentially, if there was a stunt where one of the kids in Harry Potter's was, like, one of them that I remember quite vividly was running between tents that were on fire in a field. I can't remember which film it was. And it was like in November, freezing cold, but the wind would kind of pick up and the flames would go across the path you were about to run through. And it was kind of like, essentially, it's like if they thought that the actors could get slightly singed, then they'd call us in and we'd do that instead, basically. So if there was any kind of chance that they could get slightly injured, and then they did actually have proper stunt men for the
truly dangerous stuff.
Yeah,
so like this actor gets paid way too much to do this part of the scene. We pay you very little, so please get over here.
Exactly. You're expendable. Yeah. We can get another one of you quite easily. Here's the ginger wig. Off you go.
Which films?
I think it was Chamber of Secrets.
Okay.
Prisoner of Azkaban, I think.
Okay.
I think
I might have to go find some stills.
It's really interesting because it's like all the way through it is kind of, while I was being this kind of extra, I was trying to figure out what makes the perfect extra, I suppose, to get those kind of supporting artist roles and stunt double roles. And I found there was a bit of a pecking order in, you have to be reliable. When you get given a job, you have to, turn up to it and things like this. And slowly kind of figured it out. And then, who was it? Oh, yeah. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. That was it. And Goblet of Fire. There we go.
Gotcha. All right.
Among many other films on the way to get there.
to get to your
my goal,
original goal of I want to make a Harry Potter film. That's awesome. Now, when I look at, so kind of going off that point where you've discovered Salesforce, you see it as kind of the new future, but a lot of the history I see with you in Salesforce is centered around training and enabling other people. Is that always been kind of an intentional part of your career?
I think it's almost accidental. really.
Okay.
I think I've got a bit of a learner talent anyway. I'm always wanting to learn more. But it really, actually, when I learned Salesforce, one of the things I did, because there was so little at the time, there's, Salesforce workbooks, and that was essentially it, and the online manual.
We need to frame this as pre-Trailhead.
Pre-Trailhead, yes.
Pre-Trailhead. There's some PDFs you can download off of developer.salesforce.com, and maybe you get a world tour like once a year.
Yeah, and that was it. Yeah. And so very little. And so what I did was there was the developer forums at the time, and I basically people would post a question, and I'd go, well, actually, I'll go and answer. I'll go research it, try and figure out in my dev org how to do it, and then I'd answer the question. Because I kind of thought, well, actually, if they're having that problem, then potentially I will get it as well. And it was a kind of a good way to learn. And so that kind of started this whole answering people's questions, and then starting getting, oh, actually, this is quite good feeling, knowing you're helping people, which kind of carried on, I suppose, into, doing e-learning and, supporting people and, getting an MVP for, the, community groups and things that kind of I've helped over the years as well. But yeah, now I think I've got just over like 60,000 students from about 154 countries around the world,
nice,
getting certified and, asking, interesting questions. So, yeah,
nice.
It's good.
Nice. Well, I want to pick your brain more about certification and learning, but first, I want to give a shout out to London's Calling, of which you are a co-founder of. What led to the creation of London's Calling?
I think it was on the mind of a couple of people in the community over in London that we wanted to put on an event, a one-day event for the kind of UK community, I suppose, coming all together and kind of learning from each other. And it really culminated one Dreamforce over some bubbly in San Francisco, where we said, let's do it,
Okay.
And it was like, literally, it was a napkin with what the structure of the day was going to be. And at that time, it was like a 2-day event. And then it was literally kind of, let's jump into the unknown and let's do this. And I kind of always try to do kind of one impossible thing a year. I think because it may not be impossible for other people who've done it a lot, but for me, it's impossible. And let's try and do it and see if we can, make the impossible possible, or maybe improbable before it gets to possible. And then eventually it becomes inevitable. It's going to happen. So I've kind of done that. I've tried to do that, kind of every year, try to do something that I think is impossible and try and achieve. So.
What's the learning curve like from going from a napkin to putting people on stage?
Well, it's because I grew up in theatre. It was like putting on a theatre show, but the big difference being is you've got lots of sponsors and other things. And also you had this kind of, right at the beginning, you had this kind of circular dependency of, to get a venue, you needed a deposit. To get a deposit, you needed sponsors. To get sponsors, you kind of needed a date. And to get a date, you needed the venue. So it's like, and so the first event was like, is anybody going to turn up? Is this going to be, So I think, I made the very conscious decision right at the beginning was that the sponsors would pay for the venue. And then all the attendees essentially pay for their, the food, all those kind of costs which rise in relation to how many people we got. So even if nobody turned up, hopefully we just got the money, got the money from the sponsors to pay for the venue, and we just ran away terribly fast. But no, in the end, it was brilliant, and I think we've been full every year ever since. So it's been great.
How many years running so far?
This was our 6th year this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think Midwest Dreaming was kind of the first one that started, and then I think we were straight after them. So,
wow, nice. And you got hit pretty hard with the pandemic last year from a timing point of view, if I recall correctly. What happened there?
That was a challenge. Yeah. So it was literally so our event was on the Friday. And on the Saturday, the UK government basically locked down the entire country. They'd already stopped mass events like the week or two before. So we knew the venue was a no-go for anybody under 500 people. Oh, sorry, over 500 people. Yeah, we couldn't use the venue.
Right.
But literally, it all happened really quickly in like those 2 weeks leading up to the event. And nobody really knew what was going to happen, if everything was going to be locked down or not. And we literally had to turn the event from an in-person event to a virtual event in basically a week and a half. And it was... It was mental. We were kind of pre-recording as many sessions as we could. In the end, we had a couple of speakers that came to the venue to do it live. But there was only literally about 10 of us at the venue in all. Then we realized, because of the schedule, we had lots of gaps in between all the sessions. So how do you fill that? Yeah. So we basically had a live camera at the venue where Amanda and others were doing their best to ad-lib and add content in between. I do remember grabbing Keir Bowden at one point and saying, "You're doing an interview with Amanda, go." It was amazing, but it was great fun, and like it was constant queuing up talks, and it was just crazy.
I mean, if you're going to have to do an impossible thing, it would be nice to have more than 2 weeks notice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it was like, how do you get that? For me, it was more as well, it's the experience of everybody going to the event, making sure that it was all right. It wasn't just the attendees, it's the sponsors, it's everybody else. So having these spinning up virtual rooms and having virtual stamps to drive people into the virtual rooms so that people can get the traffic and all kinds of stuff. So it was good fun. And also because it was the beginning of the pandemic, it seemed like everybody wanted to watch London's Calling. So it literally took out our website with 8,000 people trying to watch the streams. And it was just crazy. But great experience. But it was a knackering day. I can say that.
Wow. And how did this year go?
This year was, it was a lot more pre-recorded, a lot more organized. It was really good, actually. Yeah, I think it's in-person events are hard. Virtual events, I think, are harder. But then the hybrid events are even harder still. So you've got a mixture of live streaming plus, canned, pre-recorded videos and things like this. So, the pandemic event was this hybrid model, which was just crazy. Whereas this year we did go a lot more pre-canned. Well, majority, 99% of it was all pre-recorded. So it made things a lot easier.
Well, let me dig into that for a second, because I think it's an interesting behind the scenes that a lot of people don't get to see, and I'm kind of experiencing the same over on this side of the fence. Well, like, what are some of the challenges that make that hybrid model more difficult than, say, just doing one long live event?
I think so. With the long live event, I could edit up essentially the entire stream with all the, these are the sessions, but then also in between we had little sponsor shout outs and things like that. We could all pre-record. So essentially we could make it this one massive video that we just basically hit play at the beginning of the day. And then we kind of jump into live segments a little bit, throughout the day as well. Whereas the hybrid events, you've kind of got that, plus you've got the speakers speaking but may not be to time. So then what do you do with the gap straight afterwards, but you want to keep everybody's attention? And it's juggling a lot more things and having to switch to live and then switch to, pre-canned and, having people in each of the rooms. And it's just, things get more challenging, basically.
Yeah. It's a lot of very careful stitch work we have found.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So a question that I'm asking all of the organizers is, like, let's go to a theoretical future, hopefully not theoretical and inevitable. The future, though, where we're post-pandemic, conference rooms are open up again. You can get your venue back. What's your opinion on keeping a virtual layer in that future?
Yeah, I think the precedent has been set, virtual is going to be there. And to be honest, we've always, at London's Calling, I think it's bar the first event, we've always streamed something on the internet. But I think it's now, it's not thinking of them as two separate things, as an online experience and an in-person experience. It's now thinking about, well, actually, there's these two different experiences, but it's still the same group of people. How do you connect those people that are in person and online? And I think it's that where I'm having the most thinking at the moment for kind of London's Calling 3.0 next year. So,
gotcha. Nice. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about certification. For instance, or starting at least, how many certs do you have?
I think I've got 17. Although I think I've taken about 21 certifications in all, but Salesforce keeps retiring them, so keeps me on the toes.
I think I'm going to start asking, I feel like there's an inflection point for people who go into the double digits on certs where it starts to get harder to remember how many you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like 12. After 12, you're not, it gets a little fuzzy.
Yeah. And it's always that extra one that you go, oh yeah, I really should do that one. Right. Don't know enough about this. Yeah.
Now, your site focuses a lot on admins moving into architecture. What's the appeal, and I think we can include developers here, but appeal for people who don't necessarily identify as architects for looking into and studying for those certs?
I think even for me, actually, it was, I was a little bit resident, not wanting to do the architect certs because I kind of got it in my head that the CTA was impossible, basically, and that obviously all the other application certs and other certs to get to that are going to be impossible as well. And therefore I kind of left it for ages. And then there was like a point where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to try. And I did it. And I realized, well, actually, no, I know a lot of this stuff. And I actually kind of blasted through all of them within about, I think, a month, all the certs.
Really?
But I think it was that not thinking it was harder than it actually was, but also kind of that thing of, I think we've all got an architect in us, if you're an admin, if you're a developer, because if you've ever, even if it's like, you want to update a field on a record when a user updates another field on it, you've got a number of tools, you could use workflow, you could use process builder, you could use flow, you use code, you could use an external tool to update it, all the different possibilities, but you've chosen one. And there's a reason for why you've chosen it. And that is essentially an architectural decision. You've decided that based on certain reasons for it, rather than kind of jumping at the first one. So if you've kind of gone through that thought process, then essentially you're kind of got a bit of architecture in you,
Right.
And even like the sharing and visibility cert, if you look at it, a lot of it is declarative. It's about, because security is declarative within the platform. And so I guarantee you, even if you're an admin or even developer, a lot of it already. Go dive onto the website, look at the syllabus for it, a study guide, and see, the elements within it. And you'll go, well, actually, yeah, I know a lot of this. And also, the percentages of each of the, the different syllabus areas. And you'll see, actually, yeah, this is doable, basically.
Yeah. And so how much do you think you knew going into one of these architect certs versus studying up to and learning in the process of taking it? How much was relying on kind of your previous experience versus how much you had to kind of level up to it?
I think it depends on which one. I think some of them, actually it's not there anymore, but there was an optional, the mobile certification, which has been retired. But say, for example, that one, I did have to do a lot of studying. I had written one of my impossible things one year was to create an iOS and Android app for actually a theatre show. Where the deadlines are not movable. So, you've got an audience coming, so you have to have these apps ready. But yeah, so that's all my experience I had. But I didn't have experience of, the Salesforce frameworks or anything that we used within the platform, as well as the more detail around the mobile app. So I kind of had to really study for that. But then things like the sharing and visibility, I literally just would print out, or even the platform. Oh, I can't even remember half of them now. It's been so like the development lifecycle and deployment designer. I'd done a lot of DevOps. I've done a lot of kind of working with that. So it was really kind of looking at the study guide and ticking off the things I was pretty confident with, things that I was kind of unsure with, and also just Googling and finding other courses that people have done or mock exams and things like that I could kind of glean from ideas and things that I might have gaps in my knowledge. So,
got it. And when it comes to that kind of process, like how much time should people dedicate to like on a weekly basis, what should be they thinking to set aside in order to level up to some of these certs?
I think it depends on your existing experience and also if you're a developer versus admin. So I think, like, for example, the sharing visibility, in my experience, I see a lot more admins doing really well at that than developers, because it is a lot more declarative. But I do remember once I did the advanced developer, booked the advanced developer for Dreamforce, was crazy busy working on projects, so actually revised the night before, and strangely enough, failed the following day because I'd done zero prep at all. But I think a lot of these, it's being dedicated, putting a plan together, and actually just going and booking the exam like 3 months ahead. So you've got that goal that you can aim for, and then look at the study guide, break down all the pieces within it and what you need to learn, and kind of plan that out from the kind of 3 months coming back, and be, focused and dedicated at, revising those topics as you go.
Gotcha. Nice. And tell me a little bit more about the content that you do have online that helps people study.
So I've really kind of started it off people coming into Salesforce. So there's a lot. So kind of introduction to Salesforce, your admin certification course. So really focusing on getting admin certified. I'm about to actually do launching a sharing and visibility cert and start going through kind of the architecture track for people. But also the kind of the more fuzzier skills, I suppose, around architecture that may not necessarily come up in the Salesforce certs. So kind of more around how Salesforce architecture relates to business architecture, and some of the kind of the models and the kind of one pages that I've used day in, day out, which are really useful for me when I describe Salesforce or describe my architectures or designs to where I work at the moment, as well as to, other companies in the past.
Nice. Out of all of these certs, are there some that you feel like are kind of must-haves?
Oh, you know what? I think that's changed.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I always thought the must-haves were admin, sales, service. And, you've now got, that baseline and away you go. But actually, I really do think that, again, I think it depends on what your goals are. But I personally think there's a lot of people that have sales, service, and admin. And not as many that have got those architecture certs, like sharing visibility and things like that, which go into that much more depth into the platform, and that I think are a lot more useful, basically, to a company that you're working for, and makes your resume, really stand out if you've got something other than somebody else. So I think the must-haves, I think for me, have kind of changed a bit towards the architecture one, and especially the developer one. So the Lightning, web components and stuff like that. So because there's such a demand in the industry at the moment. So and it's standards based. So it's kind of
right.
Even if you don't want to develop in Salesforce, you've got that, standard for developing anywhere else, outside of Salesforce. So, it's just a no-brainer, really.
It's kind of ridiculous how the whole standards-based thing, it's not marketing. Like it's a real
it's like
huge benefit to the framework.
Absolutely. And like that's, the multiple choice test for it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it doesn't even mention Salesforce. It's pretty much, I don't think it does. It's all literally Emacs, JavaScript, how you work. So yeah, I think, definitely. Yeah. And it's the way Salesforce should go. Literally the moment it was announced, I had developer friends contacting me going, I can develop now on Salesforce. How do I learn Salesforce? So yeah. It was a big change.
Nice. Okay, I want to give a shout out to something else you've written around architecture. What is the elevator pitch for the Salesforce Capability Map?
Yes. So this is what I use a lot in companies, but it's basically a one-pager that describes the entirety of Salesforce at a kind of a level of abstraction. And so with one page, you can see all the features and functionality that Salesforce has to offer. And then I basically use that in a number of different ways. So it could be highlight all the functional areas or features that the company's bought, my company's bought, then highlight all the ones they've bought and are not using. Or it might be highlight the things where there's an opportunity to improve sales or service or whatever it may be by utilizing some of the platform features. So it's kind of like a brilliant one-pager to really show what Salesforce is, as well as demonstrate how you can maximize the investment, that a company's made in the Salesforce.
And break down a couple of those layers for me. Like, what are some examples?
So I kind of break it down into kind of 3 different levels, actually, of functional capability map. So the first level, which is kind of, I call level 0, essentially is the highest level of abstraction. And it's it's kind of modeled, I suppose, on the customer 360 wheel. It's essentially that, it's that very high level of sales, service, marketing, here's the core platform. But what I do then is, for the next layer down, is kind of flatten that out and say, well, okay, within marketing, what are the key functional features within marketing across Marketing Cloud and Pardot, but not calling out that it is marketing or Pardot.
Gotcha.
And then after that, going down to level 2, which is even more detail. So, say, for example, sales pipeline. Okay, what are the tools and features within that? Well, Kanban, whatever it may be,
Got it. So if I could find myself on the map, I can kind of see the feature set around where my interest level is with Salesforce.
Exactly, yeah.
Gotcha.
And how you can utilize or not utilize the feature, or even see what features, hey, we're using Sales Cloud, but we've never used forecasting. I didn't even know it was there.
Didn't even know it existed.
Or even on the development platform side, streaming events.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
How can I use that? Is that useful? Is it not?
Which actually, in my role back in my evangelist advocacy days, it's like allowing developers to realize that this thing exists was actually a kind of a big challenge. Like the number of times I would go to an audience and their mobile application, for instance, was entirely surrounded around vanilla REST APIs. And I'm like, you could do this in one REST call if you just put it into an Apex class. And they're like, what? I'm like, this is part of the
exactly. And I think that's one of the things about the platform where, I've been doing it for 13 years and I'm almost a little envious of those people coming into it now, because I've got all that 13 years of baggage of what you can't do.
Right.
And missing the things that you actually can now.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I always used to tell my developers, whatever you were writing last year, just throw it out, because it's probably not correct after 3 releases.
Exactly, yeah. So everything I'm doing, I'm always, I do an architectural design or a design, I'm kind of going, okay, I need to check that. Is that all still current? Is there, something that's replaced it? Is there a better way of doing it?
Exactly.
This is, again, why I love learning. You've got to keep learning. You've got to stay on it so you can, do the best, design or build the best solution,
Nice.
That's kind of as easier for yourself as possible.
And that's our show. Now, aside from trying to get onto the set of a Harry Potter movie, it turns out that Francis's non-technical hobby is also something that he considers to be one of his impossible things.
I think it has to be. So I'm a trustee of a charity, which again was another one of my impossible things. And that was, they do street operas and theatre things within schools that don't have arts or music provisions. And one of those is just going out to, really poor areas of London and them doing these kind of pop-up street operas and just seeing people's mouths just drop to the floor and go, my word, what is this person singing so loudly? And it's just, never seen it at Pork Tool before. So it's great. Or you just, they also work with children's charities that have had really difficult, upbringings, and just seeing those kids kind of come out and start talking or start engaging with people because of the art or the music that's happening around them.
I want to thank Francis for the great conversation and information. And as always, I want to thank you for listening. Now, if you want to learn more about this show, head on over to developer.salesforce.com/podcast, where you can hear old episodes, see the show notes, and have links to your favorite podcast service. Thanks again, everybody, and I'll talk to you next week.